tell. The heart's filthy lesson with her 100 miles to hell.
In the month of May, Bill and Melinda Gates announced their impending divorce after 27 years of marriage. Not long after that, there was a flurry of mainstream media stories, probably instigated by Melinda's attorneys, suggesting that Bill was being ditched because of his skeevy ties to Jeffrey Epstein, the world's most famous billionaire child sex trafficker and black network banking facilitator. But that seems to be a limited hangout, at best.
Heidi? Who's been wearing Miranda's clothes?
Melinda was concerned about a relationship you had with Jeffrey Epstein, who at the time you met him in 2011 had been already convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor. The Times reported she hired divorce attorneys around the time in October 2019 when that contact with Epstein became public. Can you explain your relationship with Epstein? Did you have any concerns?
You can tell a lot about a man's character by the friends he keeps. And Jeffrey Epstein was likely a far closer friend to Bill Gates than even Melinda's attorneys want the public to know. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Daily Beast all claim the two men met dozens of times between 2011 and 2014. But that's as far as they'll go. While intrepid independent journalists like Whitney Webb have revealed that Gates and Epstein had a business alliance, or more likely, a semi-friendly relationship built on blackmail that went all the way back to the presidency of Bill Clinton. Another Epstein friend, let's not forget.
What I would argue with the Epstein thing is where they prevented stuff from going in a lot of cases was the science stuff. They did not want that. In the tech stuff, his ties, not just to Bill Gates, which I guess is open season now, but multiple Microsoft executives who were obviously compromised.
Something in our sky, something in our sky, something in our blood, something in our sky.
Epstein had a close relationship with Bill Gates. Bill Gates has tried really hard to cover up his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, extensively so. They were very involved, and their ties go back at least to the 1990s. This has not been reported by mainstream media, but it's documented. Okay, there's a 2001 report in the UK newspaper, The Evening Standard, about Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew. It was essentially scrubbed from the internet for a variety of reasons, but I would argue one of those reasons is the fact that it says Jeffrey Epstein's closest business partners were three men: Leslie Wexner, Donald Trump, and Bill Gates. And this is in 2001, okay? Epstein victim, Maria Farmer, who was the first person to report Jeffrey Epstein to the FBI, says she witnessed Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein talking about Bill Gates like they knew him super well in 1995.
She's like, I've got to get the new vials.
Between those two things, I think there is plenty of reason to assume and believe that Bill Gates and Epstein knew each other long before 2011, which is the official story of their first meeting.
I think I've lost my way.
The fact that Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates would have had business ties in the 1990s is very significant, because what Jeffrey Epstein did, in addition to his horrible crimes against girls and women, was he did shadow banking for intelligence agencies, and he laundered money. So what was Bill Gates doing with a guy who did that?
Paddy, what a fantastic death that is. Tell the others. Paddy, what a fantastic death that is. Tell the others.
Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
A cloud formation over Geneva, Switzerland. And what is in Geneva, Switzerland? You guessed it, CERN, the European organization that operates the Large Hadron Collider, smashing particles together, playing with fire, creating all sorts of weirdness, possibly a mini black hole one of these days, that would then grow and grow and grow and end up swallowing our entire planet.
Oppenheimer's key quotes revealed that he did not know what the effect of the detonation of the nuclear bomb would be. When they conducted the Trinity test, they were unaware as to whether or not this explosion would create a chain reaction that could actually destroy the whole Earth. And yet they proceeded forward because they believed that this weapon was the only way they could end World War II, and thus the ends justified the means.
What the deep state or the cabal or the New World Order is a small group of very powerful but very psychopathic individuals that have acquired a lot of money, a lot of technology, and a lot of information over the course of centuries.
Definitely your politicians, the older ones, the one that are chair people, that command the power, 1%ers, chairman of the boards, those people, that's they. That's ones we never know their names, don't know their faces, and they control all the power.
The more you get involved in these societies, the deeper and deeper you go, the more compromised you become. You start to learn more and more of the secret teachings. You have to work really hard for the knowledge. It can take years of time. You keep accessing higher and higher levels of rank, and they keep dropping these little seeds in as you go on. Seeds that start to blossom in your mind and make you think differently. Ultimately, if you go far enough down this road, you will be invited to participate in things like pedophilia and human sacrifice. And if you don't do it, it's the offer you can't refuse. They may actually even kill you. Once you partake in these activities, whether you like them or not, they now have leverage they can use against you. If you ever dare to speak out against this group, they have photographs, they have films, they have the footage that can absolutely ruin your life.
Ik hechtte weinig of geen geloof aan hun geloof, of ik was er eigenlijk niet eens van overtuigd dat het überhaupt allemaal wel bestond.
Het was meer een schouwspel voor jou?
Ja, ik zag gewoon de donkerte en de slechtheid en de diepte daarvan zit in de mens zelf.
Ja.
Ik koppelde het nog niet zo. Maar ook die kringen verkeerde ik dus in, omdat ja, als gast zeg maar, omdat ik vond het allemaal wel leuk. Al die blote vrouwen en al die dingetjes die daar speelden. Hè? Het was het vrije leven. Maar er kwam een moment, toen werd ik dus uitgenodigd, daarom vertel ik dit ook, om mee te gaan doen aan offers in het buitenland. Dat was het breekpunt. Kinderen.
Oké. Dat werd je gevraagd?
Ja, ik kon het niet.
We all want to live free from tyranny, at least in theory. But very few of us can say we haven't meted out some tiny tyrannies of our own. Perhaps we've eaten the slaughterhouse-processed flesh of chickens, cows, pigs, fish, and cute little lambs. Those creatures might have objected to that treatment if they'd had any say in the matter. Perhaps we've been a less than stellar parent, spouse, sibling, friend, or business partner, scourging with hatred those we were entrusted to care for and love. We all have some things to feel guilty about, if we're being honest with ourselves. But most of us know where to draw the major lines. Just because something can be done, that doesn't always mean it should be done. Only a narcissistic psychopath would think he deserves to star in a blowjob trilogy performed by poverty-stricken 12-year-old triplets, specially flown in from France for his birthday party. And only a scuzzy-minded billionaire sex trafficker like Jeffrey Epstein would threaten to throw his rape victims to Florida alligators and put a hex on a pregnant journalist's unborn twin sons. Only a software coding geek with the most anti-human impulses would team up with the daughters of Robert Maxwell, a key player in the Promise software scandal, to put a backdoor into the most ubiquitous computer operating system software on the planet, thereby making his customers' private information available to intelligence agencies, thieves, and foreign governments. If anyone wants to better understand how Bill Gates colluded with the Maxwell sisters and Mossad, I've already made a video about that. Only an ethics-free opportunist, beholden to large pharmaceutical corporations, would fund gain-of-function studies to weaponize a bat coronavirus that could then be patented and used as an excuse to put whole countries into lockdown, allowing those same corporations to make billions by selling experimental mRNA vaccines to a fear-controlled global populace.
Do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress. You do not know what you are talking about.
The demented Dr. Fauci made a similar dick move by fast-tracking the incredibly toxic drug, AZT, during the AIDS crisis, giving a huge boost to the stock price of its manufacturer, Burroughs Wellcome. He's also the kind of guy who would spend over 400,000 US tax dollars to infest beagles with flesh-eating parasites from biting flies, causing those beagles to suffer and howl in agony for months before they finally died.
It's horrifying.
The myth of modern science is that a bunch of wannabe Faust figures can wring the secrets from nature and make man into a god. That's not likely to happen. Instead, those Faustian fuck-ups are herding us, like the clueless dumb sheep they believe us to be, into a geo-fenced-in surveillance state corral where we'll be infested with the nanotech equivalent of biting flies and turned into sickened hosts for the data-hungry parasites of a compassionless technocracy. In the coming dystopia, we'll all be watched over by algorithms coded for maximum extraction by antisocial technofascists. If you thought that trying to resolve a billing dispute through your health insurance provider's website was already bad, it's about to get infinitely worse. The Fourth Industrial Revolution could become synonymous with for-profit totalitarianism. You'll own nothing, and it'll suck. Hard. If that vision seems too dark, I'll remind you that the predator class has a long history of colonization and enslavement. What's changed is that the technology now exists to target and colonize people on an individual basis through 5G-enabled smart grids and the Internet of bio-nano things. It's no longer about colonizing new lands. The predator class now wants to colonize human bodies from the inside out. Maybe not by turning them into Matrix-style human batteries right away, but certainly by plugging people into the AI-controlled neurotech empire they're already building.
Check this out. See that TV over there? Yeah? Okay, if I walk up to it, it's gonna try and connect to it. Watch this. That's a cow, man. Let me see. There it is. What? Yeah. Everywhere I get the same message. I
Is it
walk
just
away.
this TV?
Nope. I walk away. Goes away.
Oh my God.
What if the relentless push to get everyone on the planet injected with experimental mRNA, possibly encased in nanobubbles of graphene oxide hydrogel, is really a way to kickstart a bio-nano slave society? What if vaccine passports are really the first step toward an inescapable digital blockchain ID and social credit score system that will create a permanent record of everything we buy or do and dominate every aspect of our lives, right down to dictating where we can work, who we can see, and when, or if, we're allowed to leave our homes? Sure, those are possibilities. But what if the poet was onto something when he wrote, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage. Perhaps everything that frightens us is, in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love." Well, perhaps. Or maybe those dragons are just assholes.
A lot of what you're seeing as attacks on me, quite frankly, are attacks on science.
As a Napolitano, born in the Bronx, I'm a real New Yorker. And to be a real New Yorker, you have to use proper New York language. So let's start with the little clown boy, de Blasio. Yeah. How about Warren Wilhelm Jr.? That's his real name. That little slimy son of a bitch. We gotta use proper language. Let me tell you what profanity is. Profanity is calling some scumbag a dignitary. Oh, I'm just a piece of shit. You're a dignitary. My heart is broken when I see what's happening. That these little pieces of shit are telling us what to do.
It's time for mandates.
Hey, little Warren Wilhelm, shove that mandate up your ass. Let's drive that piece of shit out of the city hall. He does not represent us. All of these guys, they're sucked up to the banksters. Who is Big Pharma? Hey, moron. How about drug lords? How about calling a spade a spade? Who are these guys? They suck up to the military-industrial complex. They suck up to big tech. Look at the little freaks that are running and ruining our lives. So now that you're not vaccinated, you will go to camp. That's what this little bastard's saying. The honorable fuck you. Who the hell do you think you are? And that's proper talk. That's proper talk for this situation. I'm a man of the Bronx, born to be free. Thank you for all being here and keep the fight going.
They want us to believe that our intuition that tells us to be skeptical about this mandate and about the benevolence of the government. They want us to believe that our intuition is a liar. Our intuition is not a liar. And our hearts are much, much better guides than the FDA and the CDC. And at this time, they're really trying to divide us. And I think the people who got the shot and the people who didn't get the shot, we got to stand together against the bullying, because the battle is against the bullying. And whenever there is bullying, it's not about public good, and it's not about our health, and it's not about doing anything good to us, because bullies are bullies. And you know what bullies do? You give them a little bit, they want more. You think you're going to please them, give them a little bit, they'll leave you alone. They are not going to leave you alone. They're going to come and ask for more. And at one point, they'll ask for something you just absolutely cannot give. And then they'll just eat you and toss you out. It's not just about the shots. There's a much bigger thing going on, and much more sinister. And it's not a conspiracy theory, because it's in government documents, it's on government websites, it's in policy papers, and it is happening. And this reform is going by different names. Some people call it the Great Reset or the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and it is massive, and it is absolutely fucking batshit crazy. And the craziness is not on us. The craziness is on the evil people without souls who want to do it upon us. They see us as cattle. They want to manage us like robots. And it is actually in policy papers. For example, the Internet of Bodies. They think that people and machines are kind of the same thing, and they want to turn us into machines, and they want to manage us as machines. And those shots are just the first foot in this system in which our bodies don't belong to us anymore, in which they manage us by inserting different implants, a million implants who serve the function that currently nature is doing. That's what they're trying to do. And the people who got the shots, some of them are extremely benevolent. I mean, they just believed what they were told, or they were scared. But it's not going to stop at 2 shots. It's going to be booster after booster after booster. And they're working on mRNA flu vaccine, mRNA HIV vaccine. They're working on a plague vaccine, for crying out loud. Plague. We really need a plague vaccine right now. So they want to put us on a subscription schedule for our own immunity. And that's what it's about. And it's really, really easy to get scared, because it is so sinister, so inhumane, and so evil. And they want us to be afraid. They want us to be isolated from each other. They want us to be suspicious of each other. This is something that we absolutely want to refuse to do. And I think that the way to fight the transhumanism is to be human. Fully human.
Mark, are the allegations true that you are secretly a lizard? I'm gonna have to go with no on that.
We cannot defeat them with money. But they don't have soul. They do not have love. And we have love. And we got to be human every minute of our lives, everywhere around us. With our parents, with our children, with our friends, with our relationships. We got to be human with every breath. And this is how we defeat them. And we got to pray for our love and our courage to carry us through this mess and to deliver us to total victory. Thank you.
Okay, I'm supposedly one of the leading intellectuals of our time.
Oh my God.
But please don't hold that against me, okay? Most of my colleagues, who have PhDs are also functionally illiterate. Okay? All right? I mean, the functional illiteracy is kind of breathtaking, and it's a big problem for us. And I am going to indulge myself a little bit by expressing some anger. Okay? But it is not directed at any individuals who have been intoxicated by the fumes rising from the rot of all our institutions. You follow me? You know, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That is absolutely true. That's true. So you try to talk to the people who are on the fence, you talk to younger people, you talk to receptive people, right? The people who've been jabbed, you know, terrorize them by telling them what, like Dr. Bhakdi has to say, true though that may be.
Obviously, millions of people have been vaccinated, and some have had severe adverse reactions, some have died, but the majority have survived. So what are we worried about for those people? Are we worried that that something permanent may have happened to their immune system? Is there a possibility that maybe in the presence of renewed contact with wild virus, or in some other way that they could enter into a kind of cytokine storm or autoimmune disorder? Or what are the concerns about the people who've been vaccinated long term?
This is a vessel wall. This is your blood. It is now known that the genes that are injected into your body will enter the bloodstream, and it is absolutely certain now that these genes are going to enter the cells that line the vessel wall, because these are the cells that they contact. Now, what happens when the cells that line the vessel walls begin to produce these spikes? The spikes will then be produced by the cell and protrude from the cell surface into the bloodstream. These cells are going to be recognized by your lymphocytes, given to you by the dear Lord, to kill those cells that are making the virus or the virus protein, any virus protein. So these lymphocytes are going to mount the attack on your vessel walls. This is the first way towards clot formation that, as we know, is happening all over the place, all over the world. Now, at the beginning, after the first vaccination, this danger is bad if your killer lymphocytes start trying to kill you. But at that time, during the first 7 to 10 days, there are not yet any antibodies. However, after 3 or 4 weeks, there are masses of antibodies all over the place in your blood. And if you dare to repeat this performance and start to put those spikes out into your blood, God help you. Because now, not only the killer lymphocytes are going to attack, antibodies and complement and leukocytes are also going to attack, thinking that your cells that are producing these spikes are bacteria. And they are going to try to eat your vessel wall cells.
But you don't sentence people to death. You just don't do that. You recommend, a number of supplements and remedies as antidotes to the graphene in their blood vessels. You try to save them. That's our job, is to save people. We're the ones saving lives, all right? It's us, is it not? So the idea that we somehow are morally obliged to get more third world people vaccinated with an experimental gene editing therapy that has already killed tens of thousands of people in Europe and the United States, those are reported deaths. It's probably in the millions. This is something beyond genocide, right? We have to face up to this, right? And you don't play woke games, right? Dividing people, white shaming people who don't want to get the vaccine. Please, okay? This kind of woke militancy works perfectly with the whole vaccine agenda, doesn't it? It is divisive, right? We're not interested in division. This whole nightmare has been all about dividing us. Maskers versus anti-maskers. Vaxxers versus anti-vaxxers. Who are defined more and more as despicable, verminous, disease-ridden, Does that ring a bell? Right? We can no longer, we have long since lost the prerogative of looking down at the German people, right? For their passive participation in what happened back then, right? We can't look down on them any longer because the exact same thing is happening here. Only it's happening in the disguise of concern about people's health. Now the Nazis kind of did that too, right?
Olga witnessed many a death by injection, with a vial injected straight to the heart. Apparently, they were big fans of that method over there at Auschwitz. Additionally, Olga says vaccines were sent to the camp. Quote, "These too had been experimented on and improved. These victims were chosen from French political prisoners, especially members of the French underground whom the Germans wanted to be rid of."
How on earth did this happen? Let's step back. It's hard to step back because this stuff happens by increments. Step by step, right? Little step by step towards the equivalent of the gas chambers, right? More and more restrictions, and they loosen them up a little bit, right? And then they come down again on you, right? And people are scared again. And the more scared they get, the more angry and hostile they get at people who are not complying, right? That's what they're doing, step by step. So let's step back and ask ourselves, how is it happening that a 5 months pregnant woman in need of cardiological care is turned away from the hospital because she hasn't been vaccinated?
I've had a cardiologist appointment scheduled since May. It is now August. Today is my appointment. I show up for that appointment wearing a mask. He's wearing a mask. And I'm told that because I am not vaccinated and because he is too young to be vaccinated, I can't be seen. A 5-month pregnant woman who is having heart problems cannot see the cardiologist she has waited months to see because I'm not vaccinated. Tell me again that it's about public health.
How is it possible that a judge in Cook County just stripped a woman of her parental rights because she can't get vaccinated for medical reasons? How is that happening? Well, how is it happening that we're surrounded by people who are masking their children? How is it happening that people are driving alone in their cars with masks on? It makes no sense. None of it makes any sense because here we get into the realm of propaganda, okay? We all know a fair amount about what's going on because we kind of shift our gaze from the screen inside this sealed theater and look elsewhere for information, right? Well, most people don't have the time or inclination to do that. Most people don't even know they should do that. Now, it was that way in Germany, it was that way in the Soviet Union, certainly, right? But here we have this mask of free speech. We have a First Amendment. So people figure, I'm well informed, especially those with PhDs. I'm well informed. I can't be fooled. I'm smart. I'm not like those deplorables, right? I'm smart. They're not, okay? Well, the fact is that even here, maybe especially here, even though there's no single central authority running the whole media, right? It's a kind of a cartel of corporate interests that are all operating on the same script. Our media is functioning exactly like the media systems in closed societies, so-called. It is exactly the same, and it's probably more efficient. If you have trusted in these voices, in this system, these authorities all your life, you consider yourself a well-informed person, and the alternative to believing what you're hearing is to believe something very scary, right? Most people won't do that. It's too difficult. So that leaves us to do it, right?
Yeah, that leaves me to do it too.
That leaves us to do it. And I think that we can do it. In fact, I know that we will do it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got so caught up in this Marvel comic book. I just didn't realize the press conference had begun. This is amazing. It's limited edition. It's exclusive. It's really special. It's amazing, but you can't just get it anywhere. You can only get it at a vaccination site, a Sumos vaccination site. This is where we're going to help make kids safe and, like the Avengers, fight back against evil. In this case, evil is COVID. I think you figured that out.
Get your shots. I don't like wearing masks. There's you people who aren't getting the shots that has brought this mask thing back. I'm just saying. Take care.
Screw your freedom.
The one controlling the vaccine controls the virus, and the one controlling the virus controls life.
There's no way a conspiracy that big could be kept secret, people often tell me. Someone would talk. I point out to them that someone always talks. But those whistleblowers are either censored, threatened into silence, ridiculed, or murdered. And extremely powerful people are always put in charge of spin and damage control. Alan Dulles with the JFK assassination, Cheney and Rumsfeld with 9/11, Ben Bernanke and Handsome Hank Paulson with the 2008 financial coup d'etat, and Gates and Fauci with the COVID pandemic. There's also the demonstrable fact that many witnesses to criminal conspiracies are simply bought off. It's no harder to buy off a doctor, a scientist, or a university professor than it is to buy off a politician, a media pundit, or a government agency tasked with protecting the health and welfare of its nation's citizens. I'm thinking specifically of the FDA, but by now we should all know what the term regulatory capture means when it's applied to any state or federal regulatory agency or advisory group.
The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, is the agency that regulates big pharmaceutical companies, and it's funded by those same big pharmaceutical companies. Can you see any potential problems in the FDA being funded by the big pharma companies that it's regulating? The FDA has moved from an entirely taxpayer-funded entity to one increasingly funded by user fees paid by manufacturers that are being regulated. User fees! This is our fee for using you. Today, close to 45% of its budget comes from these user fees that companies pay when they apply for approval of a medical device or drug. Isn't it mental? Like when people say there's no way we can improve our systems of government. Yes, you can. Here's a few things. Don't have the FDA funded by the people it's regulating. Ban lobbying right now, immediately. Oh, shit, all right, that would definitely be better. That would definitely... Yeah, when we say it couldn't be improved, we mean we'd prefer you didn't improve it because it's perfectly good for us the way it is now because we can all make loads of money from it, even if it causes tremendous, unimaginable suffering for ordinary people.
And again, the damage, from the looks of things, it is very significant.
Perhaps a few people with integrity will resign when they're asked to violate basic ethical principles, but most will keep their heads down and just go along with the plan, even when that plan leads to mass enslavement and genocide. For people in positions of power, the I got mine credo tends to rule. Need a scary death toll projection for the latest bioengineered plandemic you've cooked up?
Stay indoors.
Neil Ferguson is your go-to guy. Just award his university department with a multi-million-dollar grant and watch him massage the numbers in his computational models for infectious disease transmission to predict any number of hypothetical dead bodies you want. His predictions have a history of being grotesquely overblown, but the establishment media never seems to mention that inconvenient fact. Need to slander a widely prescribed generic drug that can safely and effectively treat early-stage COVID infections so you can preserve your emergency use authorization for Operation Warp Speed mRNA vaccines and force everyone to get jabbed or lose their jobs? Rachel Maddow, CNN, and Rolling Stone have your back. They'll mock that drug as a horse dewormer for you and tell the world that so many Midwestern hicks are overdosing on it that gunshot victims have to line up outside hospitals in their winter clothes at the height of summer to wait their turn in the emergency room, all of which turned out to be wildly untrue and could have been refuted with a single phone call. But propaganda doesn't have to be grounded in reality, and Rachel Maddow, Anderson Cooper, and the other Mockingbird media whores are only pretending to be journalists.
It's spooky to think that these mainstream news publications have been completely captured, completely, to the point where they're all spitting out the exact same narrative. And you're watching it in real time, and you're like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah. I want to say something about horse dewormer. So ivermectin, the drug that shall not be named, sure, it works against worms in horses and other organisms, but It's literally understood. It's on the WHO's list of essential medicines and has been for years. The discoverer and developer won the Nobel Prize for it in 2014-15, I can't remember. And it's literally understood to have antibacterial and antiviral qualities and works against lots of other RNA viruses like Zika and dengue and yellow fever. And no one is talking about that. So is it not as effective as some people think it is against COVID? Maybe, sure. But is it dangerous? No. It's been given hundreds of millions of doses. And is it effective? It seems so, but given that it's safe, why aren't we using it?
The trouble with humanity is that we've never been free of conspiring cabals of short-term oriented psychopaths willing to open the Pandora's box of evil consequences for almost any act that can give them a quick boost in worldly wealth and power.
An image now coming in of some damage from a church in McCall. It looks like the steeple has been taken off.
The results are in for 1995, and once again, Microsoft CEO Bill Gates is the richest man in America. Gates says that he is grateful for his huge financial success, but it still makes him sad when he looks around and sees other people who have any money whatsoever.
So Bill Gates, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we talked about them before. He obviously, is still involved, still benefiting from his inventions and patents in the tech space, and at the same time he's invested in and distributing vaccines. Doesn't it create a truly unholy alliance now that this kind of, I don't even know what to call it, gesture has been completed of an elected official calling on Silicon Valley to erase someone critical of vaccines? Don't we have the danger of these kind of conflicted tech bros who might be invested in the software, in the platform?
We don't give two shits about how technology works, because all we care about is getting fucking rich.
Microsoft has the model for the vaccine passport, quote unquote, and the former CEO is also invested in vaccines and distributing vaccines around the world through his nonprofits. Couldn't that create a kind of totalitarian reality in which the message about vaccines, the investment in the software to, produce the vaccine passports, the ownership of the platform in which we talk about vaccines are all owned by the same people, and they all...
that's what we've been talking about from the beginning. Gates has these incestuous relationships with Anthony Fauci that go back 20 years, where he's, paying Fauci, and they have all kinds of really corrupt financial entanglements with each other. He brought Fauci to his house in 2000, and his $189 million house in Seattle, brought him into the den, sat him down and said, I want to have a partnership with you. The way that Fauci explains it is that Fauci would develop the drugs and then pass them on to the drug companies, to Merck, Sanofi, Gilead, Johnson & Johnson. Gates would then guarantee markets in Africa through his control of WHO.
Oh, wow.
And Gates, because he controls WHO, he controls those countries because WHO pays for their health ministries and supplies all their HIV medications, and they have to do what WHO tells them to do. So he can require those countries to buy the vaccines from these companies, and he then is invested in the companies. In Merck, he owns, and by the way, Gates has no pretension that he gives a crap about public health. His other investments are in tobacco companies, in processed foods, in Coca-Cola, in Cargill, in Monsanto, in Philip Morris, Kraft, cheese, and then all the oil companies, which he owns stakes in virtually all of them. So he's not a guy who cares about climate or who cares about public health. He's a guy who cares about control. He's the biggest investor in Apple and in Facebook. So he's invested in all his competitors.
Oh, God.
Now, all of these, and then what happened during the pandemic? We do the lockdown, it obliterates the American middle class. It transfers $1 trillion of wealth upwards to where? Silicon Valley.
That's right.
He's made $22 billion since the beginning. $22 billion he's made from the lockdown.
There's been over a 20-to-1 return.
If you had put that money into an S&P 500 and reinvested the dividends, you'd come up with something like $17 billion, but you think it's $200 billion.
Here, yeah.
And these are companies that are in charge of censoring criticism of the lockdown.
I get it. It's a
which is making them rich.
Clearly one of the best investments I've ever been involved in.
So the whole kind of incestuous, corrupt coup d'etat against American democracy, against public health, and using this, biosecurity as a justification to impose these totalitarian controls on our nation is really,
terrifying.
You know what it is. Yes. I mean, we can see it happening. We read about it in Orwell. We read about it in Kafka. We read about it in Aldous Huxley. And, we know what happens next.
I hereby inform you, under powers entrusted to me under Section 47, Paragraph 7 of Council Order Number 438476, that Mr. Buttle, Archibald, residing at 412 North Tower, Shangri-La Towers, has been invited to assist the Ministry of Information with certain inquiries, and that he is liable to certain financial obligations as specified in Council Order RB/CZ/907/X. Sign here, please. There. Thank you. Same again, please. Just there. Press harder this time. Good.
Oh, what is this all about?
That is your receipt for your husband. Thank you. And this is my receipt for your receipt.
If you want to understand the ruling class, what they're doing, you can't view their actions through the prism of personal experience. They don't think like you. They don't even feel like you. These are people that make decisions about human lives the same way and with the same emotional disconnection that you do when balancing your bank account. Human life is a form of currency, and they spend it the same way you do, to get the things that they want. Media manipulation by bankers with money interests and governments beholden to those bankers is not the exception, it's the rule. There are countless verified examples that government schools conveniently leave out of the history books, and banker-funded media conglomerates are the last people that are going to give you a peek behind the curtain they've woven to protect themselves from the retribution they would surely face if the public were to discover just how little their lives mattered. One of the most well-documented examples of how war profiteers operate that parallels exactly with how these war profiteers operate today is the sinking of the Lusitania, an event that would claim the lives of nearly 2,000 people, including 195 Americans, and would be the false flag to get the American public behind a war that would later claim the lives of over 100,000 Americans. A war that up until this false flag, planned by the elites, including J.P. Morgan and his Rothschild backers, and the Wilson administration, was only supported by 1 out of 10 Americans, and the motivations are the same as they've always been: money and power. In the early 1900s, J.P. Morgan, the American agent of the Rothschilds, sold war bonds in America to fund the English and the French in their war with Germany. Not only did they profit through handsome commissions from these bonds, the money raised was then spent at the companies owned by Morgan and the Rothschilds. War was big money. Total purchases would rise to an astronomical $3 billion, which in today's money would be roughly $74 billion. Morgan's firm became the largest purchaser on Earth. And when German U-boats appeared to be turning the tide against England, they faced a very real possibility that this ocean of money would dry up. This would mean substantial losses to their balance sheets. Additionally, this would also threaten England's ability to repay the billions of dollars it had borrowed with war bonds. In fact, Morgan was finding it difficult just to sell the bonds that funded his military-industrial complex, as it appeared the Germans might claim victory in a matter of months. To make matters worse, Morgan himself had loaned around $37 billion in today's money that he was now in danger of losing. Something had to be done. Morgan hired a committee that identified the 25 most influential newspapers. He then installed editors at each of the papers and paid them off to run stories that were pro-war. Eventually, he had over 1,000 newspaper editors on his payroll and used his vast advertising purchasing power to strong-arm the smaller papers to trumpet the same pro-war sentiment. The Rockefellers of Standard Oil, who would also profit handsomely from the war, used its own publishing companies to influence the people against Germany and funneled money to reluctant congressmen. Massive parades were held. But with all this campaigning and social engineering, the polling data still showed that 90% of Americans still favored staying out of the war. Enter the false flag that would plunge the world into war, killing over 100,000 Americans to protect the interests of the bankers and the ruling class. Winston Churchill, who knew all too well without American involvement in the war he would soon lose to Germany, began to work with President Wilson and the bankers on the false flag that would force the American people to support the war, the sinking of the Lusitania. The Lusitania, while built as a British passenger ocean liner, had been retrofitted with armor, revolving gun rings on its decks, and was classified by the British Navy as an armored auxiliary cruiser. Its lower passenger compartments had been removed to make room for the war munitions exported by America's industrial military complex. Churchill ordered the Lusitania and all ships to ignore orders from German U-boats to halt and be searched, and instead to engage the German U-boats or even ram them without warning. He also ordered crews not to treat captured U-boat crews as prisoners of war, but to execute them. This left the German Navy with only one option: to sink ships suspected of delivering war munitions on sight. The Lusitania, whose previous captain resigned over Churchill's plan to use passengers as human shields, was loaded with weapons and ammunition sold by the J.P. Morgan Company in violation of every neutrality treaty. The bankers and the politicians they owned were purposely sending unaware Americans right into a deadly trap. The so-called passenger liner, carrying over 6 million rounds of ammunition, was directed by the British Navy into an area where a German U-boat had recently fired upon 2 ships and was known to be active. To ensure the ship would be vulnerable, the destroyer that was supposed to escort the cargo to port was called back without notifying the Lusitania, leaving her a sitting duck in hostile waters. And on May 7th, 1915, close to 2,000 passengers, including 195 Americans, were sacrificed to the bankers as the German U-boat, U-20, fired at the hull, setting off a massive explosion when the munitions in the cargo ripped a hole so large in her starboard bow that one of the largest ships ever built sank in less than 18 minutes. The Lusitania was purposely loaded full of explosives and then led defenselessly into hostile waters in the hopes that it would be sunk by the Germans. This was the false flag that propelled America into what would become known as World War I, a war that easily could have ended before claiming the lives of over 100,000 Americans, that died so that the military-industrial complex and the banking class could avoid losing money on a profitable war, a war that would later lead to another world war that would claim the lives of millions. All this so bankers could grow fat on the blood of the people that would line up for the slaughter, war after war after war. The details of this false flag have been largely hidden from the public. In fact, as recently as 1993, the official story was that the Lusitania had exploded because of coal dust in the boiler rooms, and that it had not been carrying ammunition or explosives. The real story remained hidden from the public for nearly 100 years, until in 2008 when divers found millions of rounds in the hull of the sunken wreckage. The media had successfully covered up a false flag for nearly a century, a fact that completely obliterates the notion that false flags involve too many people, and that surely someone would talk. Do we have to wait another century before we get the truth of modern false flags? When will the people stop confirming the ruling class's belief that we're all just cattle to be slaughtered for profit?
Chaos reigns.
You know how I stayed alive this long? All these years. Fear. The spectacle of fearsome acts.
New from Barker Brothers, a game for the entire family. Scot-free. Your team has just assassinated the president. Can you get away scot-free? Shake the dice and see. Great, you found a patsy. Go again. Bonus card. You get Jack Ruby to kill your patsy. That's good because dead men don't talk. Oh no, Abraham Zapruder films the assassination. Tough break, but now you go again. And a stroke of luck, 22 material witnesses die of unnatural causes. Now your opponent shakes again. Uh-oh, look out, Life magazine buys the Zapruder film. But you buy Life magazine and show the frames out of sequence. You're almost home. Now you must spin the public opinion board. You've done it! The public believes it! You're scot-free! Available from Barker Brothers.
The United States is not a normal country. We're a homeland now, under military surveillance and military control. The President asked the Congress, right after 9/11, not to conduct a major investigation. The media, which is controlled by the great conglomerates, which control the political system, has done an atrocious job of reporting, though sometimes good stories get in. I've worn my eyes out studying the Wall Street Journal, which despite its dreadful editorial policies, is a pretty good newspaper of record, which the New York Times is not. If you read the Wall Street Journal very carefully, you can pretty much figure out what happened that day. At the time of the first hijacking, according to law, FAA, it is mandatory within 4 minutes of a hijacking, fighter planes from the nearest airbase, military base, go up to scramble. That means go up and force the plane down, find out who they are, find out what's happening. For 1 hour and 50 minutes, I think it was, no fighter plane went up. During that hour and 20 minutes, we lost the 2 towers and 1 side of the Pentagon. Why didn't they go up? No description from the government, no excuse. A lot of mumbling stories which were then retracted and new stories replaced them. That to me was the end of the Republic. This thing is surrealistic now, and it is getting nastier and nastier.
Of that. What's in the minds of leaders in New York to say, okay, we got these vaccines, it looks like they're failing, we're in an outbreak of Delta, the safety data look not good at all, we haven't had a single safety report yet. Let's ask everybody in New York to just take the vaccine in order to go to a restaurant. That is the question. What is in the minds of people? What is in the minds of a doctor to tell a pregnant woman to take a vaccine like this? It is, I think the best way to characterize it, it's a disturbia. It is maybe a group neurosis. It is something that's come over the minds of people all over the world. And I tell you, whatever's going on is going on in the tiniest island of the Philippines and Indonesia, the smallest little village in Africa and South America. It's all the same. It's come over the entire world.
In this upside-down world of ours, people often confuse popularity with importance, wealth accumulation with wisdom, and political power with spiritual authority. But all too often, an inverse relationship is at work there, which goes a long way toward explaining why we're living through an epic of gaslighting.
Boot camps for youthful offenders. Under this bill, we can string up barbed wire. We can build Quonset huts, and we can put them in boot camps.
See, when I talked to you before about the future, it's not very far off the horizon that if we don't get one disease under control, you may find legislative bodies taking whole classes of people based upon propensity of conduct to say, we're going to put you in a certain category. We're going to demand mandatory testing for you.
Many of us are frustrated with the nearly 80 million Americans who are still not vaccinated, even though the vaccine is safe, effective, and free. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. The vaccine has FDA approval. Over 200 million Americans have gotten at least one shot. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
The predator class seems to think their bullshit can keep them afloat at the top of the world forever. And why wouldn't they, given how compliant most of us have become? Let's take a look at the insanity-inducing lies spewed at us from the National Institutes of Health.
You're not going to get infected.
Lies that were then amplified for mass consumption by taxpayer-funded government defense contractors specializing in propaganda, like Answer and Fours Marsh.
They're the marketing firm.
That's how the predator class got away with brainwashing the majority of Americans into thinking that an elfin, servile, death-dealing jackass like Anthony Fauci was a national hero. 26,000 scared, simpering sycophants even signed a petition to nominate Fauci as People magazine's sexiest man alive, demonstrating that many among us have succumbed to an absolutely mind-bending, Patty Hearst kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army level case of Stockholm Syndrome.
I would roam the world clutching my dog-eared People magazine, sowing my wild oats like some sort of nude magical gardener.
But sorry, all you addled old ladies, he's taken. His wife, and probable handler, is Christine Grady, whose family goes way back with George H.W. Bush and his family. All kinds of shady deals occurred between the Gradys and the Bushes during the AIDS crisis. Christine is now the head of human subjects research and chief of the Department of Bioethics at the National Institutes of Health. Do you think she found any reason to object to skipping the animal safety trials and going straight to using billions of human beings as test subjects for the new, unproven mRNA vaccines? No fucking way. Pfizer and Moderna need to make bank.
Wherever this is the fastest approval the FDA has conducted on a drug. You'll recall the speed was one of the things that worried some people who were cautious. And do you anticipate, or maybe stay up at night thinking about the possibility you're going to have to go back in the lab at some point and come up with something better?
I don't talk about lizard people, but have you ever seen that before? Look at this.
Christine Grady's husband is an avuncular, pathological liar who should be thought of as the American Mengele, or perhaps
the J. Edgar Hoover of public health.
He lied about death counts and the reliability of PCR test results. He lied about the efficacy of mask mandates and lockdowns in preventing viral transmission. He lied about asymptomatic spread. He lied about the dangers of safe, effective, and inexpensive generic drugs like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, thereby preventing doctors from saving the lives of their patients, a number now estimated to run into the millions.
Hydroxychloroquine is not effective in the treatment of coronavirus disease or COVID-19.
He lied in front of Congress to deny that he'd had any role in funding the high-risk gain-of-function research on bat SARS-related coronaviruses that started this whole phony pandemic.
You appear to have learned nothing from this pandemic. Will you today finally take some responsibility for funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan? Whenever I have done a thing in flames, whenever I have done a thing in flames, it has
outrageously incorrect in what he says. Thank you.
History will figure that out on its own.
And now, that self-important little shit muncher is lying again about leaky vaccines and natural immunity.
There was a study that came out of Israel about natural immunity.
An Israeli study that had 2.5 million patients and found that the vaccinated group was actually 7 times more likely to get infected with COVID than the people who had gotten COVID naturally.
And basically the headline was that natural immunity provides a lot of protection, even better than the vaccines alone. So as we talk about vaccine mandates, I get calls all the time. People say, I've already had COVID, I'm protected, and now the study says maybe even more protected than the vaccine alone. Should they also get the vaccine? How do you make the case to them?
You know, that's a really good point, Sanjay. I don't have a really firm answer for you on that.
He doesn't have any firm answers when it's fast becoming apparent that natural immunity is far more long-lasting and robust than mRNA spike protein specific immunity, which hasn't been working out so well for the enthusiastic vaxxers in Israel and other parts of the world, thereby exposing the vax or else mandates as stupid, counterproductive, and potentially lethal for those, like me, who have already survived a bout of COVID-19.
Kiss me hard before you go. Summertime sadness. I just wanted you to know that, baby, you're the best. I got my red dress on tonight, dancing in the dark in the pale moonlight. Done my hair up real big, beauty queen style. High heels off, I'm feeling alive. Oh my God, I feel it in the air. Telephone wires above, are sizzling like a snare. Honey, I'm fire, I feel it everywhere. Nothing scares me anymore. Kiss me hard before you go. Summertime sadness.
The truth about Fauci can be found in Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s new book, The Real Anthony Fauci. That book reveals, with extensive documentation that would hold up in an impartial court of law, that Fauci is a bioweapons grifter who used the billions of dollars in research grants that he controls to invent and inflict a series of contrived false flag pandemics on the world.
Everything from COVID-19 and our efforts to address the global pandemic. Our efforts to address the global pandemic.
Which would include the bird flu scare of 2005, the swine flu panic of 2009, and the Zika virus epidemic of 2015 and 16. He did it, quite simply, to enrich himself and his big pharma partners, while simultaneously increasing the global power of public health technofascists, as personified by Bill Gates. Aided and abetted by the military-industrial media intelligence complex, and a worldwide network of corrupt health officials and conniving politicians, who all stand to benefit.
We will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the New World Order. We want to cause anguish, hurt and suffering to as many citizens as possible.
Fauci and his team of miscreant scientists, like Peter Daszak and Ralph Baric, have been using genetic engineering to lay the groundwork for the imposition of for-profit totalitarianism on a scale never before seen.
There is a bioweapon that in 1999 was paid for by Anthony Fauci, was patented at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 2002. It was the recombinant coronavirus, which had the following protocol that was actually a bioweapon created by NIAID for this very moment. And that bioweapon was an infectious, replication defective, their words not mine, infectious replication defective clone of coronavirus. 1999, people. This bioweapon was engineered to destroy humanity. And if we started talking about a bioweapon and not a vaccine or a virus, we'd get a lot of progress.
Which brings us to the biggest lie of all, this summer's Delta variant and the so-called pandemic of the unvaccinated. The Delta variant is just a cover story. It's being used to explain away the abject failure of the COVID shots to provide lasting immunity, or any sort of immunity at all, really. You can still catch COVID and pass it to others, no matter how many shots you've had. It also serves as a nasty, dishonest way to blame all those spike protein-related deaths we've been seeing on the unvaccinated. But don't be fooled. The so-called vaccines are now responsible for the majority of those deaths, along with an endless variety of life-destroying adverse reactions, which would include heart attacks, strokes, myocarditis, Bell's palsy, Guillain-Barré syndrome, prion diseases, cancer, antibody-dependent enhancement, and other horrific outcomes far too numerous to list here.
There was a time when I would scroll through social media and see posts about the pandemic we're going through, and the comments would just be like, this isn't about health, this is about control. And I would always just brush those comments off as conspiracy theories. Like, of course the government has our best interests at heart. Of course the government doesn't want us to get sick, and they're trying to take care of us. And then I found out the very, very hard way that this is not about our health. You want to know how I know it's not about our health anymore? I have first-hand experience on this topic. Okay, so my husband, after his first dose, got myocarditis. He had multiple doctors say that it was likely caused by the jab. Then they went back and said it was unlikely. Then they refused to write an exemption for the next dose. But now we found a doctor who absolutely wholeheartedly believes that this was caused by the jab. He wants to help us. He really does. But you know what he said? If he writes us an exemption, he's going to get investigated and he's going to have his license threatened. How is it that when a doctor is trying to help a patient write them an exemption for something that severely harmed them the first time, is going to get investigated and have their license threatened? How is it about health? How is it about health when those other doctors are sending people who have had severe adverse reactions back to go get a second dose? Wake up, people.
The journal Circulation is a well-respected publication. It's 71 years old, its articles are peer-reviewed, and in one survey it was rated the world's #1 journal in the cardiac and cardiovascular system category. I'm going to quote the final sentence of the abstract which appears at the beginning of the article. This is all I, you, or anyone else needs to know. Open quotes. We conclude that the mRNA vaccine dramatically increases inflammation on the endothelium and T-cell infiltration of cardiac muscle, and may account for the observations of increased thrombosis, cardiomyopathy, and other vascular events following vaccination. Close quotes.
What they don't want you to know is that the vaccine is the bioweapon this time around. Specifically, the spike protein that the coronavirus shot's lipid nanoparticle-encased mRNA tells your DNA to make is the pathogen that ends up poisoning your body and causing harm. The treasonous exploiters at the highest levels of our governments know this. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, better known as DARPA, has been pouring money into mRNA research since at least 2013. Moderna is essentially a DARPA-created front company, with the NIH publicly acknowledged as the joint owner of Moderna's coronavirus vaccine, the only medical product Moderna has successfully launched.
Oh, it stands to make Tony Fauci's agency billions and billions of dollars if they succeed in getting that vaccine approved, mandated, etc.
They didn't open the door and buy the office chairs at Moderna without DARPA money. And BioNTech, who's the real provider of the mRNA to Pfizer, is IARPA and DARPA from day one. CIA had IARPA and then DARPA as the DoD's advanced research projects. So we're living a DARPA world here. And the dirty little secret now is you don't need to make much change to the bioweapon, to the bioagent, to have a vaccine. And there you go. Now you're getting $1 trillion in warp speed.
And they had thought it was just a, false echo.
So it appears that American military intelligence is actually behind the insane push to mandate the vaccines and force them on everyone, even on children as young as 5.
I certainly don't understand the push to get children vaccinated. I think that's absolutely reprehensible.
This is really just a time for parents to celebrate. These are new.
Undeniable statistical evidence shows that children and young adults face a far greater risk from getting the jab than from catching COVID-19 or any of its variants.
My name is Robert Malone. I'm a physician and a scientist, but more importantly, I'm a father and a grandfather. I'm generally pro-vaccination. I've devoted my entire career to developing safe and effective ways to prevent and treat infectious diseases. Before you inject your child, a decision that is irreversible, I wanted to let you know the scientific facts about this genetic vaccine, which is based on the RNA vaccine technology I created. The viral gene will be injected into your parent's cells. This gene forces your child's body to make toxic spike proteins. These proteins often cause permanent damage in children's critical organs. These organs include their brain and nervous system, their heart and blood vessels, including blood clots, their reproductive system, and most importantly, this vaccine can trigger fundamental changes to their immune system. The most alarming point about this is that once these damages have occurred, they are irreparable. They cannot be reversed. This novel technology has not been adequately tested. We need at least 5 years of testing and research before we can really understand the risks associated with this new technology. I ask you to ask yourself, as a fellow parent, if you want your child to be part of the most radical experiment in human history. There's no benefit for your children or your family to be vaccinating your children against the small risks of the virus, given the known health risks of the vaccine that as a parent, you and your children may have to live with for the rest of your lives.
Yet most parents, seemingly under a spell of mass psychosis, are frog-marching their kids in to get those jabs without questioning what Dr. Fauci told them.
You're going to be able to get your vaccine as soon as you turn 5. And I know you're excited and I know you're eager. In some places across the country, you can even start making your appointment now for shortly after your birthday.
I have a 3-year-old. Is there going to be a time am I going to be okay? Is she going to be okay? Or he going to be okay? And let me say this, I strongly support the independent scientific review of vaccine usage for children under 5.
If it's going to be used, it's better to focus on those groups who have risk of severe disease and death, rather than, as we see, some countries are using to give boosters to kill children, which is not right.
Declared war against the government.
God calls for harsh punishment for parents who sacrifice their own children. And now I think everybody knows that the spike protein vaccines are biological weapons aimed at human beings, also aimed at human children. These vaccines contain nanoparticles which attack the body from inside, even damaging the DNA repair mechanism. If the modern world does not stop this medical violence being committed against children, it's quite clear that God will unleash his wrath against the nations of the world. And this will be, of course, in the form of plagues, earthquakes, pestilence, economic collapse, war, and mass human suffering. Nations that turn away from God are heading directly down the path of total destruction. Mass vaccination of children with spike protein injections has no scientific or medical justification whatsoever and seems engineered to enrich Big Pharma while mass murdering young human beings for the future of the human race. As the children of the world die from myocarditis, heart attacks, immunological disorders, and even cancers, it is going to become apparent that humanity is engaged in a planetary scale mass child sacrifice ritual to Moloch, spurred on by demonic anti-humanists like Anthony Fauci.
If they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people could recognize there's a person there, so it's easy to criticize. But they're really criticizing science, because I represent science.
Science? I think he means the Lollipop Guild.
I'd have to laugh at that. I should be prosecuted.
Yes, you should be.
Historically, all the coronavirus vaccines, all of them, have demonstrated ADE in animal studies.
Yes.
So now we're deploying something that has the potential of killing a large percentage of the people that are getting the vaccine, and everyone's okay with that? So what's happened here is the following, that the real pandemic is the global fear and the isolation that has been accomplished by the use of this artificially made bioweapon. COVID-19, according to all opinions, is an artificially made bioweapon. We know that in 1999, Dr. Ralph Baric modified a surface protein to make it infect human beings, a bat virus, and we know the patent number associated with that modification. And then it got outsourced to China, and they made modifications that augmented the lethality of this virus, that it could kill human lung tissue and cause blood clots, and we know the patent numbers of these modifications. So not even the liberal media has the audacity to deny that this is an artificially made bioweapon. Yeah. I would have been called a conspiracy theorist.
I know, that's shifted, right?
Now it's a conspiracy to commit genocide.
Right.
Not a theory.
Right.
So when you have this deployed on the human race, and it caused global fear, and you know what happens if you studied psychological warfare, which I have, prolonged fear and anxiety, coupled together with human isolation, psychologically decompensates the individual, that they have a breakdown and are not capable anymore of rational thought. There's a global psychosis going on. And people will gravitate towards any false promise that will reduce their emotional pain that they're in because of the fear. So you can dangle a false vaccine in front of them and they'll believe it just because they don't want to feel the pain anymore.
Right.
If you challenge that narrative, they become belligerent, because what you're really doing is you're bringing them back into that emotional pain state that they don't want to be in.
Interesting.
They've lost their minds, literally. So, and the people that have orchestrated this are evil, but absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, masters.
Nobody wants to believe that the governments of the world could be doing something as malevolent as what they're clearly doing. Nobody wants to face that. I mean, some of us have been forced to face it, and indeed common sense dictates that we face it, and the more people have this sort of brutal experience of vaccine injury or bereavement, the more people will wise up to this. But the fact is that it's quite natural that people want to think that those empowered to look after them and to govern them are benign. They can't really believe, and therefore don't want to believe that what's happening is really happening, and that the likes of Bill Gates, Dr. Fauci, Pope Francis, who calls vaccination an act of love, nobody wants to think what we all think here on this conversation, which is that there's something satanic going on, right?
What is MK Ultra? I don't recall that.
That was the program, the CIA's program for under the Technical Services Division to experiment on population centers with disease and drugs.
And what years was this?
It started in the 50s and lasted until the 70s when Jack Anderson began to expose it, and then the media caught onto it and the Congress investigated, and supposedly it was stopped, except it was such a broad program that there was never any one bill that said stop this. It was just that the exposure made everybody presume that the thing would be stopped. And you have to be very troubled and very skeptical. Not one person was punished. Not one person involved lost a paycheck or was censored or was fired or much less jailed. Also the Army was involved, but a lot of the Navy's activities, the Navy was just cover for the CIA. But experimenting on population centers with whooping cough viruses, with other kinds of viruses, dragging a barge through San Francisco Bay, leaking a flu-type virus to measure that technique for crippling a city. Apparently using swine fever virus, which is very much AIDS similar, to wipe out the hog population in Cuba in 1961. You add these things up, and we have every reason to ask if this is not either a deliberate or an experiment or a testing or something that's gone awry done by the CIA.